very special guest today, the one and only tech titan of, well, I want to say Chicago, but I would say most of the country, Mr. Howard Tullman. How are you, buddy?
Good. Nice to see you, man.
Nice to see you. And Howard and I running across some circles together, know a lot of the same people. You've been on my show a couple times before, Howard. The many iterations of Howard Tullman, when I first met you, was at Flashpoint Academy. Then you evolved to 30,000 other things and ended up with 1871.
Right.
And we'll briefly touch on all these things again. And
Sure.
now you have a brand new venture that I'm super excited about. Why don't we start with the venture and we'll work backwards from there.
70,000 square feet of new innovation and technology space on the campus of Illinois Institute of Technology, or we call it Illinois Tech. The facility is going to be called the Kaplan Institute for Innovation and Tech Entrepreneurship. And what we're doing is appending to 1,500 smart undergraduates and 3,000 smart graduate students how to be an entrepreneur, how to be an innovator, and how to learn those disciplines. So when they come out, some of them will start businesses, some of them will go work for big companies, little companies, whatever. But the idea is they'll be better next generation employees, because today it's a different world in every respect. And so this building is literally built so you come in with an idea and you can leave with a prototype. And it's going to have maker labs, it's going to have workspace. We're moving the design school, the Institute of Design, which has always been downtown, to the campus. And so we'll have architecture, engineering, all the technical sciences, computer intelligence, and then design, all in one place.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
By
the way, this was sort of the same idea that 7 years ago we did with 1871. We said,
Yeah.
if you're going to build a place, let's have mentors, let's have venture capitalists, let's have the universities, let's have members, the whole 9 yards, all the tech companies. 1871 is still the only place in the world that has its own Apple Genius Bar, so outside of an Apple store.
Are you still connected to 1871?
Sure, I'll be on the executive committee and on the board, and it's not something you exactly leave behind. And
Sure.
We're invested in probably 24 companies at 1871 as well. So I'll remain connected. And honestly, the idea about the new Kaplan Institute is it'll be a feeder for 1871. It'll be a feeder for M-Hub and these other places where you're now moving to the next generation.
Now, when you said, you could come there with great ideas and there's maker labs and people can, just unleash their creativity and make the next great product.
Absolutely.
Who funds that?
Well, the university in the first instance is going to be helping to fund it, but the building was built through the very generous support of Ed Kaplan and his family. That was the anchor gift. Vic Morgenstern, Jamie Kelly, a lot of different people. And as you walk around the place, you see a lot of familiar Chicago names too. And so the Crowns and all of these organizations and individuals and philanthropic families have been a part of this. That's part one. Part two, and again, this was something we learned in 1871, you can't rely on Good Samaritans and charity. You got to set up a win-win proposition.
Sure.
And so my goal really is to work with large corporations. Every single corporation you meet today says the same 5 things. We're not generating enough new ideas ourselves. We can't hire these young, really smart people. The guys who built it won't break it.
Yeah.
We're doing things in years that we need to be doing in months. And we got to capture all this domain expertise and move it to the next generation. This is the engine to do that.
Sure.
And so that's what's really exciting.
So the idea of merging business with education can sometimes get gray in some worlds.
Yeah.
How are you navigating that?
Well, look, I mean, I think that up to about a decade ago, business was a bad word if you were in education.
Sure, yes.
And I guess what people have figured out is that education is a business. This is what Andy Warhol said about art. He said, the best art is, about a business. So I think that's gone away. I think the stigma of being commercially focused, I think universities have to figure out how to pay for themselves too.
I agree.
And it's not going to be tuition driven alone.
Yes.
So they have to add value to an ecosystem, and this is part of Kaplan Institute, very central to the next generation of ecosystem that reaches backwards into the students as resources and also as prospective unbelievable employees, but also reaches outward to really bring the community and business into the university. And so there'll be a lot of these partnerships, a lot of these instances where we'll provide services, we'll provide bodies, we'll provide new ideas to corporations. And that's part of the model too. So I expect that it'll take a year or two, but we want it to be self-sustaining and freestanding, just like 1871 has become. And then the other thing that I would tell you is it'll always be the case that 10 or 20 or 30% of the people will never buy into the new promise, the new premise. That's okay.
Why?
We're not going to, well, because they're comfortable. And because in the world of academics, there's a nice safety net, tenure and all this stuff.
Sure.
And,
but you have a tremendous amount of student debt, and when I hear what's going on in my mind, because I've just read an article about this, that there's so much debt, and that how do you get in front of the 8 ball when you're already starting behind it?
Oh, it's terrible. Listen,
well, you're creating a system of ROI, in my opinion.
Yeah, we are, and we're also creating the opportunity through internships and apprenticeships to help offset some of that cost while you're going through school. But the student debt situation is insane. It's about 1.3 trillion now. About 40 million people owe an average of $30,000, and you're exactly right. It's a burden that's changing the way they look at life. I mean, a lot of these kids would be doing completely different things if they didn't have to start paying the bill. And God forbid you buy into this bullshit from the government where they say, oh, take 5 more years, and the meter keeps running.
Sure.
And this is how people end up owing $100,000. It's crazy.
Right.
So,
and probably, I would say, a good quarter to a half aren't even doing what they went to college for.
Right. Well, there's for sure it's that, if not more. And one of the reasons that this university was so exciting to me, and the reason we really think that it's a different kind of place. First, it's the only tech university in the city. Second of all, it's transformative because a huge number of the students are first generation college and lower income but really smart. Letting them make this jump into the middle class and having them have a level of education that probably exceeds anything in the rest of their family changes the game for them, for their family. And by the way, they stick around. I don't think they get on a bus and go to the West Coast because that's not the nature. So hardworking, dedicated, hungry, local, great employees, that's the design. And to make them entrepreneurial and innovative as well, we know they're smart from an engineering standpoint. And that's one of the reasons I like that the Kaplan Institute is going to be focusing on the disciplines around innovation, which is a real science, and also entrepreneurship. I think everybody and their dog is going to have to be entrepreneurial going forward.
Sure.
Whether they are going to be a technical entrepreneur or not, almost doesn't matter. I mean, every business is blowing up. When you look at transportation, you look at the new Amazon store with no cashiers. There's 11 million cashiers in this country, more than teachers. And in 2 or 3 years, most of us are going to prefer what we today prefer. I'd rather deal with the ATM than a teller. I'd rather do self-checkout than wait in a line.
What about like Argo, who doesn't take cash anymore?
Of course. So all of this stuff, I mean, they don't take cash on the airlines anymore. All of these changes sneak up on you. People think that it's going to be a while, and the truth is the future is here today.
And you guys are standing behind it with Kaplan and the new program.
The building will be complete at the end of August. We'll start to move everything in. We'll open October 25th. Classes full-time will start in January.
Are you already getting registration?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, this will be the existing student body.
Just telling everybody.
They'll all take classes as part of this experience. They're getting to build their dream. So that's how I see this, as a giant factory for turning ideas into invoices. That sounds pretty crass.
No, that sounds pretty right on. Is what it should be, really. And ultimately, what everybody with a great idea wants is to monetize it somehow.
Of course.
You know what? I got to say this before we wrap up. Interviewing you through all the phases of your career over the last whatever decade I've known you, today, looking at you, there's a different sparkle about you. I'm not kidding. Like, this is the Howard I first met at Flashpoint.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because you're back in education again.
I think it's back in being involved with something new and the chance to build something. I just said earlier today to somebody, listen, managing is a whole set of skills and everything else, but I'm more into building and creating. And this is, couldn't be more excited about this prospect. I mean, it's going to change the whole university because nobody even knows we have this unbelievable resource 15 minutes from downtown.
Sure.
And to put it on the map, like 1871 is now #1 in the world. Chicago, the growth in the Chicago technology community is inexplicably gigantic. 165,000 jobs in the last 5 years, 9 million square feet of new tech space in the business district. Crazy. 2% of the economy used to be technology 5 years ago. Today it's almost 14%.
And
What business isn't tech enabled?
I agree, and you got to feel great about being one of the pioneers of that.
You know, it's good for the city, it's good for our entrepreneurs, and it's been a privilege. I mean, it's really a joy to build something and to have the satisfaction of looking back and seeing that you helped change a lot of lives.
Where does Howard Tullman end his career?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I think that I always say that, you know, you're not really old. I mean, I'm old, but you're not really old until you have more regrets than dreams. And I still have a lot of dreams.
That's great stuff. Howard, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, bud.
Good.